Welcome, everybody. This is I think the fourth year I've had the opportunity to sit up here and actually help lead this panel. And what I'm going to do is just briefly give you some overall view of our school system. And then what I'd like to do is open up for questions from the audience. But I want to introduce two of our board members that we have a great board of education of 7 and have Mr. Earl Taylor and Mr. Paul Wiggins sitting on the back row. If you'll raise your hands. Also, I would like to thank our distinguished county commissioners, our county manager, and all the support staff to our left. And the importance of recognizing them is also to talk about our relationships between the county and what we do as a school system as well. Overall, we have over 26,000, almost 27,000 students in our county now. We're 39 schools. We opened a brand new one down in Dixon. How many people are here from Dixon? Raise your hand. Very nice school. I don't know if some of you worked on that plan or not. I know we have some students working on those plans. If you're a freshman, raise your hand for me. Have some freshmen. Sophomores? Juniors? Seniors? Wow. So you all getting antsy as seniors, getting ready to go off to school. So, so you've spent 4 years here, and then some of you are just starting. So when you think about our school system and with the complexity, we are growing about 300 to 400 students a year in our county. And you're probably saying, where in the world is all that coming from? Well, we have a lot of businesses have been built and infrastructure has grown. We also have, I think, some of you from Dodea, right? From Camp Lejeune. Glad to have you here. They are an important partnership with our school system, so we're appreciative of you being here as well. And I'm not able to speak so much on your side, on the DIA side, but on the other side, we're excited about some opportunities that have come forward. For the first time this year, I believe we have some early college students here. Raise your hand. That was something that we're very proud of has taken place, and Mr. Strobe, the principal, as well as a teacher, I believe this year has done a great job. And one of the things that we're real excited about coming is our Career Center. I don't know if you've heard much about it or have had conversations about it, but hopefully in December of this year, we're going to open a Career Technical Center that's going to be shared with Duplin and Jones County as well in our school system. We are funded through the state by each person who sits in this room. There's so much money that comes down from our state that's actually funded from the state, and we also have some local dollars that come per each person in this room as well from our local government, which is our county. And that's why the importance of our partnerships that we have in terms of figuring out all the complexities of what we call a funding formula, which is unique in our state in terms of how we finance our operations with our county partnership. But the state's been set for all schools in terms of how they actually run the operation. So most of our monies do come down from Raleigh. Teacher salaries and those type of things as well all come from Raleigh, not from, we have some dollars that actually come from the local dollars when what we call supplements, but the main salaries all come down from Raleigh. And there's salary scales and those type of things that fit where a teacher would be in terms of years of experience. So basically what I like to do is you learn more when you ask the questions, because what's important to you. When I was a teacher in the classroom, I did very little lecturing in terms of, a lot of times I gave it back to the students to ask the questions, to learn about, what they're actually what's important to them. So what we'll do is we'll open up the floor to questions, and I know we always have a bunch of questions, and we have probably about 25 minutes to entertain and try to be as direct as I can with the questions that you have. So who wants to start? Go ahead. Well, it's been seen as a priority in our county to keep the senior project with collaboration from different people from throughout the system. as well as staff that I have sat down, as well as our board, support the senior project. They think it's an important piece that students are able to go out and have some experiences in an area that they can come back and share and put that on paper as well. And it's done well here, even though I know it's an extra amount of work that you have to do in order to graduate from our schools. And the senior project is still being done in a number of our school systems throughout the state, even though it's not being required by the state. So we have about 1,600 teachers in our school system. We have about 3,500 to 4,000 employees total. To kind of give you an idea how large our school system is. We currently have a new school getting ready to open in the Richlands area. We're getting ready to talk about building another school because our schools are at the point where a lot of them are at capacity. I know you probably, have a lot of students in classrooms and, lacking space. It's always been a challenge for us when you're growing as much as we talked about growing.
How involved are you guys in the creation of new schools in the county? Like, how do you guys go about doing that?
All right, we're very involved. So what we have to do is, first of all, you have to find a piece of land, and you research a piece of land that has to be so large that a school will be able to fit onto it, as well as making sure there's sewer and water and those type of things accessible to the land, as well as accessible to an area that you're looking for in terms of building a school. From that, there's a planning committee that looks at what type of plan is needed for that school and an architect. So you'll have a number of architects that'll put in their design plans. Like in Dixon, when we did the middle school, we brought students in with the architect once it's chosen to sit down and try to map out what they would like to see in their school. I can tell you now our new schools are a lot different from our old schools. One, they're more secure because, the old schools are open campuses, and the new schools, you won't find the open campuses. You also will find a lot more technology in the new schools as well as more energy efficient heating and cooling in a school as well. So all those things, when we build a new school, comes into effect, and we take all those suggestions, and so it's a collaboration between the architect and my staff, and then we present it to the school board for recommendations for it to be approved. And then we also work with our county as well on those issues as well.
What is your stance on teachers carrying guns and being proposed in the state legislature?
That's a good question. The security of schools right now is being questioned in terms of how we keep everyone in this room as safe as possible. That's a big debate item for me to look at it. We want to make sure whatever choices we make to allow or not allow in the schools is going to be best for the schools in the long run. That's not a one-person decision or one person's opinion. I think that's something collaboratively they talk about, not only from, obviously it goes to the General Assembly to allow or disallow what you can do in the classroom, but that is a debated question from that standpoint. I know I didn't directly answer that question from my standpoint, but it would be something to have conversations about to see if it's an absolute need or not, or what else we can do to offset that.
What steps do you think we can take to keep our schools safe?
So let me tell you a little bit about security in our schools. We can't talk about protocol in terms of how you already doing your lockdown drills in school, but we work very closely with all of our law enforcement. We have what we call the SILOC system. You press a button, and that button does not only allow the administration people to know that you have a problem or if there's an issue going on, but when the SILOC button is pushed, all of our law enforcement in the area is alerted about what's going on in our school. So if the button is pushed, suddenly I get a text message, and some more people on my staff get text messages. The law enforcement people get text messages. They're all alerted to go to that school for whatever reason it might be. We have those push buttons that you have at the door. I know they're frustrating for people, but a lot of times we want to make sure we're allowing the right people through that door. Now, obviously, if somebody wants to come and harm someone in the school and they have the right tools to come in, all that doesn't really going to, probably stop any from doing it. So the important thing is for us, and to educate everybody in this room, is if you know of anything that might be of danger to our schools, or you hear something in the community, telling somebody is the most important thing you can do. And that we're really going to try to educate when you're in a community and you're having a conversation. And to learn a lesson is be very careful on what you say and how you say it. Even if you're kidding with somebody about maybe shooting up a school or just joking about it, and somebody overhears it, it now becomes, in somebody else's mind, a threat. And I can tell you right now, they are taking anything like that very seriously, because we want to make sure we do the very best in preventing something if we can prevent it from that standpoint. So those are the conversations, and if you hear something, please let one of the school officials know so we can look into it.
It seems like recently that, there have been a lot of creation over elementary schools like Stateside and, the one on Belfort that they're creating now, and they're addressing the overpopulation in those schools. But what is the current plan when those students reach the upper grades as high school? Because I know plenty of schools are actually overpopulated right now.
Right. So we have a group called ORAD, which is a organization out of Raleigh that looks at our population and the growth of our population and looking at from elementary, middle to high school. And what we do is we stay informed in terms of how over capacity your schools are. So we take the highest needs first, and then we work down from a priority standpoint. Building a school building is very expensive, anywhere from 28 million just for the building, not counting the land, all the way up to probably 75 million, possibly for a larger school like a high school. So the numbers really change a lot. So the capacity of how many schools we can build over time obviously reflects back because it's all of our buildings that we build in our county comes from local funding. So our county commissioners are tasked at trying to figure out how we have funding for our schools, and in retrospect, taxes and everything else is involved in that as well. So it's a big question on how do we prioritize which school goes first. It's the ones with the biggest needs at the time. We know the Dixon area is blowing up, Richlands is blowing up in terms of capacity, and we're trying to do the best we can. And the question is, when I have to redistrict or talk to a group of parents about moving children around, it's very difficult when you've been going to one school district and then suddenly I'm coming in front of a crowd saying you're going to have to go to another district next year to be able to fill seats that might be available in another district. And I've done that 3 times, and most superintendents don't like doing it once, but 3 times I've had to do it, and for the right reasons, because we want to make sure there's space being filled in the other schools. But back to your question is, we're always having that on our barometer, and we're always having conversations with our board and with the county in terms of what those needs are. And we want to be able to build schools that are going to keep you as secure as possible as well. There was someone in the back.
So you said that in your career of education that you've been on every level, a teacher, a principal, and now a superintendent. In your opinion, which one have you enjoyed the most?
Good question. I love teaching and coaching. That was to me what I wanted to do, getting into the business. Not to say I don't love doing what I'm doing now, because I can do it on a larger scale and affect more people. I'm here because I want to make, a better environment for you in your schools and making sure you have the things you have. But when I was a teacher in the classroom, you're a teacher, and I was a coach for 10 years. And really impacted more on the down level, and was able to see your faces each and every day, where in my world now, I don't get that opportunity as often as I did going to school. So that was my first love. And then I went into the administrative part. And obviously, financially, it does make a difference when you move up, through the ranks, so to speak. But I enjoyed each level. because they were all different as you go through a business and operation. But your question is the teaching and coaching part. I would say most educators, if you ask them in my role, will always go back to saying that's one of their most enjoyable moments.
So I just had a question about the different, how do you guys distribute the funding among the programs? Because I feel that there's been rumor about Onslow County cutting the arts programs, but a lot of students have noticed more funding going towards athletics versus arts.
That's not true. Our county and our Board of Education is committed to our arts program. Our arts program is one of the best art programs in the state, the music, and we're absolutely committed to keeping our arts program here. Now, the challenges are sometimes when laws are passed in the General Assembly, we have to look at how we, use our money wisely. And sometimes we were just talking about the K-3 legislation, if you were told about that in your classrooms or not. We had the idea of having to juggle some things around, but right now we have a reprieve for a couple years. But I don't want anybody in this room to go away thinking that we're going to do anything less for our art students or our music students because it's a big part of Onslow County and we're planning on keeping that. Athletics is different. That money is not being funded by us. Actually, they're funded through gate receipts, through football and basketball, and a little bit of revenue they have from the other sports. All that money is directed toward athletics. So there's a separation there. So if you didn't know that, that's a great question to ask. So when you leave here, don't put the two of them together because they are separated.
How do you ensure that students still get the education they need for, but if the schools are overpopulated, how do you make sure that they're still learning? Because in Dodea, sometimes we have up to 2 teachers in the room. So how do you ensure that students are still getting the essential education or the one-on-one action with teachers?
Well, we do have a ratio we try to maintain in terms of how many students go into a classroom, even though our middle and high school have larger classes than our elementary. We try to make sure that we balance that as much as we possibly can and making sure instruction is valued in there. Again, it's a challenge to make sure we find additional spaces so our classrooms don't get so large. But I think our education and our teaching has still been strong even with our growth. I commend that we're growing as a school system is a great thing rather than losing people and losing schools. So we just have to be able to meet those challenges.
With the recent upsurgence in population in the area, is Onslow County taking any measures to add more academic programs into the school to make us more competitive with areas like Raleigh?
Yeah, we're constantly making sure, and I think we have done a pretty good job of adding, classes, curriculum, making sure we have slots for teachers to be hired. One of the biggest challenges we're having now is finding enough teachers. And I love for those seniors in this room to think about education in the future and come back to Onslow County to teach because we'll definitely have a spot for you. And hopefully our salaries in those in our state will improve to the point that we can entice more folks to come back to our school system because it is a rewarding occupation. But the curriculum that we have is pretty consistent with most of our counties. And we have a lot of challenging courses. A lot of you are probably in honors and AP that are in this room, correct? We want to add more of those. We got a couple we got a NIMSY grant that is coming our way. We hope we're in the final stage of having more AP classes coming. And we're just going to start talking to our middle schoolers about taking those classes, challenge yourself to take those classes and be more involved with AP, and hopefully that'll be a benefit as well. But the digital front is getting ready to change quite a bit of the landscape of what education is all about.
What is Onslow County doing to decrease the turnover rate of teachers that are leaving Onslow County to try to increase the amount of teachers that are staying?
Right, so That's another good question. It's about 15 to 16% a year that we actually turn over teachers. Now, one of the reasons we have that is we're a transient population. Our military, they come and go every 3 years. And a lot of those are teachers that are married to a Marine or a Coast Guard person that we have on our base. And they're here for 3 years and they go when the spouse leaves. So that number raises our number compared to the rest of the state. What we're trying to do is, as well is recruit more people, because we have something we can recruit with, and that's our coastline. And our supplement is better than our surrounding counties right next to us that helps recruit teachers into our county. So we have a better opportunity to recruit, but it's the number game that we're having problems with. They're just not there like they used to be. Our universities and our state colleges are not putting out enough teachers to replace the ones who are retiring and leaving North Carolina. So now we're having to do a lot of recruiting from other states as well. And we're trying to raise the salaries. And I think the last index that came out said they're now up to 35% of the nation, which is better than it was, because it was like 48. But we have a long ways to go. We should be in the top 25 in terms of salaries in North Carolina. And we're always going to promote that to our General Assembly and challenge them to find ways to pay our teachers, because we feel like our teachers are the backbone of what we do day in and day out.
How often is it looked at with the school calendar with pushing the start date of school up a little bit so that we end our semester at Christmas, so the kids can take their exams prior to having 2 weeks off?
I would love for us to be able to have that flexibility. I totally agree. That is squarely on the shoulders of our General Assembly, who mandates when we start school and when we end school. And we have very little flexibility. I'm always up to Raleigh lobbying saying, hey, we need flexibility from our local side to be able to choose what's best for us. And that is, if we want to start early enough to end before Christmas, because how many people in this room like to come back after Christmas and face 2 weeks before you take exams? Raise your hand. How many would like to take their exams right before Christmas and not have to worry about it? So my challenge to you is, when you get to the role of where you have a voice now, use your voice in Raleigh and let them know the importance of why you think that we should be finishing school before Christmas. Also, early graduation. If you're a senior, it used to be you could leave and you can start your college semester after Christmas if you chose to do that, if you had enough credit. So there's a number of advantages to have flexibility in the calendar. I just want you to know that locally, and from my side and my school board, we don't have that flexibility. The only time we get to choose a calendar is Mr. Anderson over here surveys our teachers, and we have only but a few days to be able to choose what that calendar looks like. Right here in the back green.
About 2 or 3 years ago, you guys changed honors from being 1 point weighted to being half a point weighted on your GPA. Like, why did that happen? So 2 or 3 years ago.
The state, I believe, changed all the weighted in terms of how that, again, that comes down from the state in terms of how we weigh all that in terms of, and also we went from a 7 to a 10-point scale. It is generated by the state in terms of how our course is weighted. In the back?
How often do you have contact with teachers that are currently in classrooms?
So we have a teacher advisory. Mr. Maticola, where you at? He sat on that, and he met with us and kind of gave us the flavor in terms of what teachers are thinking about in their school. And we have the Teacher of the Year that actually comes and sits down with me and kind of lets me know from a voice what their schools are asking in terms of what their needs are and their concerns are. And we try to address that. We also try to give them feedback in terms of what's coming and what's being mandated to give back to the faculty as well. And hopefully it will trickle down to you as students as well. Yes, in the blue jacket. Is it blue? I'm colorblind a little bit. Yeah.
My name is Sam Sawyer at Jacksonville High School. It's a pleasure to meet you and thank you for being here. Secondly, I would like to, on behalf of Jacksonville High School's International Baccalaureate program, and being a diploma program student myself, has there been any discussion on county involvement into the IB program, or further county involvement into the program, such as further funding, or perhaps extending this program out to other schools as well?
Right, so the IB program at Jacksonville High School, and we have some feeder schools that actually feed in that are IB as well. IB is very expensive to be able to maintain. We have stayed committed in trying to have a good, solid IB program at Jacksonville High School. And then we have the principals at the other schools always have conversations about what their needs in their school. So some will come to the table and suggest what their needs may be, more AP courses. So AP versus IB, they're very similar in a lot of ways in terms of challenges. So what we're trying to do is make sure the stakeholders in the schools are helping making those decisions on what those needs are. So if there was another high school that wanted to do an IB program and they brought it forward, they would be listened to and look at the costs and on how that would be run. But right now, the other schools besides Jacksonville High School have a pretty strong AP program that's going on in place of IB.
I wanted to know if you all have a policy on student demonstrations, because I know for Dodea, they've released something because our students are trying to organize a student walkout, and the teachers are not allowed to initiate it, but they are allowed to chaperone, they just can't participate. So I wanted to know if you all have a policy on student demonstrations?
So we allow free speech, and those type of things. So what we try to do is, like on the 14th, I think, they talked about the walkout, is we're having our principals work with student government in terms of how that will look in terms of what that high school wants to do for that day. We honor that on both sides of people's opinions from that standpoint. So we don't penalize or suspend students for their right. But we do have conversations to make sure it's done in a proper way. We don't want students who are coming to school going across to private property and then something happened. There's a liability issue on that as well. So we have to maintain some type of balance in terms of how we allow that type of demonstration versus how far it goes in terms of time and place. Well, we have a supplement we add to the teacher's salary of 10%. We add to the state salary scale. But like I said, most of the money comes down from the General Assembly. They mandate how much money that salary looks like from a beginning teacher to an experienced teacher of 30 years or more. And there's a scale that goes along. And we are constantly every year, from the superintendent side all the way down to the HR side, down to the principal side, a proponent going to the General Assembly asking for more money for teachers.
How do you go about determining how much money the special education program or that side of the school gets?
So federal money is used most of it for the biggest proportion for EC in our district. We have a rising EC population in our county. Good, better, and different. Our military thinks Onslow County is a good spot for their children a lot of times if they have special needs to come here, because we try to do the very best in meeting their needs. And we feel very obligated to make sure we do the very best in meeting the special needs of any child. But the money that we have locally is a small match from the federal part of that. And we definitely always need more money for services, because services for EC services are going up, and up. So it's definitely something that we have to consider, as well as the social and emotional ed in our schools. That's another issue that we're talking about from early elementary all the way up through high school. And all the way in the back?
You said the General Assembly kind of controls everything. What's one thing you've done since you've been superintendent that actually impacted the students?
That did what now? That I did that,
Yeah, like you said that the General Assembly controls like the AP things, the GPA, the honors department, that kind of thing. What's something that you did that impacted all the students?
so one person does nothing by themselves in the school system. All I do is basically, I have a team of, teachers give advice and recommendations. I have principals who come to the table. For instance, you have laptops, right? That was something that we had to initiate and do ourselves. The early college coming on board was something we were able to initiate. The Career Center that's being built is something that we have initiated from our school system and not from the state. Obviously, we get some monies down from the state to help support some of those programs, but the digital rollout, the one-on-one, and some of the programs that you have in your schools are funded, like Code to the Future, which is not in the high school, but it's in the elementary and middle. Special programs like that we're adding actually come from our local finances in order and trying to make sure your curriculum is beefed up, so to speak. So from that standpoint, but when it comes to personnel, salaries, and those type of things, a lot of that is directed down from the General Assembly because we're not a revenue stream in terms of education. We cannot raise money Onslow County schools. It's either funded some by the local county commissioners or it's funded by the state. We don't even have a sales tax. So a lot of states have their own taxation. School systems have their own taxation. We do not have that in North Carolina.
I don't know if you already answered this, but in terms of funding, once again, how is it determined how much goes to which programs and which schools? Is it based off of like population, or is it based off of like the demand type thing?
So there's budgets. So this is budget season, right? So what we have is all of our departments have budgets. And what they do is they sit down and they analyze and prioritize their budgets, and they bring that to the table. And we look at what we can do to fund that because obviously our wants are always bigger than what we can afford. So we always have to look very closely on how that impacts you as students in this room and making sure programs are run as efficient as possible. We can always do more for every program that we have if we had more resources and more money, obviously. But because we have a limited amount of resources, we look very closely and prioritize with the help of the principals because they're part of the budget process. We bring some parents in as well, and then it comes up to our staff in terms of what those priorities are in those schools. And I would say we could have 15 needs in a high school or one particular school, but we may be able to afford a third of that. So each year we try to bite off a little bit more than we did the year before, just so you know. But there's not a wealth of extra money for us to be able to just, continue to put in new programs or we're trying to maintain a lot of times what we currently have, and we add a little bit each year.
For our teachers that have like computer classes and stuff, I understand that Onslow County blocks, certain websites and categories, so like students don't info and stuff. But as far as our teachers that have like computer programs, and for our school we have bigger programs that I know other ones don't, and our teachers are also blocked on many of the same things. How can they download or get things that can help them teach their students better about that program?
So it's a real fine line now with the internet. We had a cyber attack back in the fall, and we had to re-image all your computers. So we had to be very careful on what we allow through the filter, because any of those programs that we do allow, we have to be very careful and make sure we captivate the ones that are trying to attack and hack our computers. That's becoming more and more each and every day. So being selected and isolated at times is not always great, but there's always a reason behind it because of the damage it will do in terms of how it goes into your computer now and seeks out financial information, personal information, and all those different things. So it's just not, we may like a program to be allowed to be entered in, but when you do one of those programs, a lot of times other avenues and other streams, and I'm not an IT guy, but my IT person tells me, if you add this, and then you're taking a threat risk of allowing all these other things that come along with it. So we have to be very guarded on that. And we're trying to work with teachers to allow more things as we go along, understanding what security threat it might be for us in the future. One more question.
What was Onslow County's decision to use Microsoft Office 365 and give large funds to that when there's other programs out there like Google Drive and/or like Edmodo that are free or less funds?
Well, I'm going to be very honest with you. I'm not an IT person on why we chose Microsoft 365. I know it's a consistent platform for us that we can use, and I think it is one of the lesser expensive ones that we've had in the past in terms of how we can use it. But you got to look at the platform in terms of how we use 365 all the way up to the state level, and if it actually connects with every other asset that we use for 365. I would love for you to have, I'll address that question to my director of IT and ask him, I had a question from you today about why we chose 365, and what I'll do is I'll relay it back to the teachers that are in this room if you'll share it with the students, because I'm not going to be able to give you, probably the answer that you're looking for. Thank you.
Mr. Jack Bright is the chairman of the Onslow County Board of Commissioners. Jack Bright retired from the Jacksonville Police Department as a deputy chief of police after having served 30 years. He also taught at Coastal Carolina Community College for 22 years. Commissioner Bright is an active member of the Onslow County community and has served on numerous advisory boards and commissions. He is currently serving on the following advisory boards: Jacksonville Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, Jacksonville Onslow Chamber of Commerce, and the Onslow Water and Sewer Authority Board. Commissioner Bright is serving his third term as a county commissioner. Commissioner Bright holds an Associates of Arts degree in Criminal Justice from Coastal Carolina Community College and has received certifications from the North Carolina Department of Justice and the School of Government in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Jack Bright.
Thank you for that kind introduction. I'm wondering if that was me or not. Welcome, students. This gives you as students from your various high schools the opportunity to play a role in county government, and it's an educational tool for you, and you are our future. Some of you are really going to be sitting in these seats one day and taking my place and the rest of the board's place. So I welcome you here today. I think this is a really good way to get you acclimated to the government and how the government runs and how the school runs. You'll find a lot of information from the DA's office that you'll be able to put to use. And I just thank you for being here, and thank the school for the opportunity to allow us to put this on for you and get you guys acclimated on what we actually face and do every day. And some of the stuff that you're looking at is some of the stuff we actually do and face. So it's a real life experience to be here today and do that. Thank you for having me. And I think there's going to be other
commissioners. What we're going to do now is let our other students introduce the rest of the commissioners, and then we're going to go right into our mock commissioners meeting.
Okay, I will say Commissioner Knapp will not be able to be here today. He had a previous engagement and he's not going to be able to attend, but his heart's here and he's surely with the students. Thank you.
Mr. Robin Knapp, Vice Chairman. Robin Knapp is a former veteran USAF officer and retired supervisory special agent with the U.S. Naval Criminal Investigative Service, and has a total of 29 years of U.S. government service with 27 years of federal military special agent. Commissioner Knapp was assigned to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. In 1990, he has worked intensely with local law enforcement jurisdictions during the course of his career and was heavily involved as a coach for local youth programs and assistant coach for Jacksonville High School baseball. Commissioner Knapp is a recipient of the USAF Commendation Medal, USAF Achievement Medal, and many awards in superior performance, Special Act Awards to include nomination of NCIS Special Agent of the Year while assigned to NCIS. Commissioner Knapp spent 22 years of his NCIS career at Camp Lejeune and retired in 2012. Upon his retirement, Mr. Knapp made Jacksonville his home and currently works as the Director of Customer Service and dealer, G-Co Tactical Holsters. Jacksonville, Mr. Knapp received a Bachelor of Science degree in International Affairs from Florida State University in 1983 and received a commission in the USAF Reserves in 1983.
Commissioner Bennett works as a realtor broker associate with the Century 21 Champion Real Estate and has been an independent businessman in Onslow County for more than 20 years. He previously served in government as a police officer and administrator in the Rocky Mount and Morehead City Police Departments for more than 12 years. Throughout his professional career, the one common thread has been service before self. He has always loved helping others. Royce Bennett is now serving in his first term as the Onslow County Commissioner, where he is chosen as Vice Chairman of the Board. He now serves on the following advisory boards and commissions: Committee of 100, Onslow Civic Affairs, Jacksonville-Onslow Area Chamber of Commerce, and Onslow Water and Sewage Authority. Commissioner Bennett received a Bachelor of Science degree in Criminal Justice from North Carolina Wesleyan College. Please join me in welcoming Commissioner Bennett.
Thank you. I'd just like to say welcome. It's always, last year was my first year doing this, and it was a lot of fun. I would encourage you to during our discussions today, to keep an open mind. Always try to look at both sides of an issue and consider how it affects both sides of the people involved, because the decisions that we make are very relevant to your daily lives. Thank you.
Mr. Paul Buchanan has resided in Onslow County since 1969 after receiving an honorable discharge from the United States Marine Corps, to include service in Vietnam. Commissioner Buchanan began public service with the Onslow County Sheriff's Department in 1970. In 1974, he joined the Jacksonville Police Department, during which time he served as a supervisor in charge of the Special Operations Division for Vice and Narcotics Investigations and Evidence Division. Commissioner Buchanan was promoted to commander in charge of the SWAT team and Department Training Division for Jacksonville Police Force. Commissioner Buchanan received 2 Purple Hearts, one when he was wounded in Vietnam and one when he was wounded performing his duties as an Onslow County Deputy Sheriff. Commissioner Buchanan serves as the Director of Law Enforcement Training at Coastal Carolina Community College. A North Carolina Wesleyan College graduate with a Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice, Commissioner Buchanan holds numerous specialized instructional certifications, professional credentials, and memberships. Please welcome Mr. Bob Buchanan.
You can do all of that. It's something that's interesting, is to take your career and just resume build throughout the years, but the biggest thing you'll always hear me say to all of our young people, you are our future. You mean the most to me as a county commissioner, and when you get up here later on and have to talk back and forth with the commissioners, you're going to find out that the duties that we have to do, like Commissioner Wright and Commissioner Bennett said, we have a lot of responsibility, but our responsibility is to the people of Onslow County and to our children, because your children are what? They're our future. Thank you.
Mr. Mark Price retired from Onslow County Schools in July of 2016 with 30 years of service as a teacher and football coach. Commissioner Price is currently serving on the following advisory boards: Aging Planning Board, Eastern Carolina Workforce Development Board, Topsail Island Shoreline Protection Committee, and Tourism Advisory Board. Commissioner Price earned a BA in History and Master's in Social Studies Education from NC State University. Please welcome Mr. Mark Price.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. It's a chance for you guys to get out of the classroom as civics, or whatever. If you have taken civics, it's kind of like hands-on civics. And it's an opportunity for you to apply many of the things that you've talked about, and to really look at it through the lens of a particular issue, as we're about to do here today. So I'm glad you could be here, and I'm glad I'm here. So just get as much out of this as you can and enjoy the day. Thank you.
Cotton is a veteran of the United States Navy where he served as an explosives ordnance disposal diver. He received his bachelor's degree in Master of Public Administration from Appalachian State University. He has served in North Carolina local government since 1997. He has served in both municipal and county management. 13 of his 19 years, David has served as the manager. For the past 7 years, Mr. Cotton has served Onslow County as the assistant county manager, deputy county manager, interim county manager, and currently serves as a county manager. Let's welcome David Cotton.
We will now call the session of the County Board of Commissioners to order and ask the county manager to present the item regarding an ordinance regarding panhandling in our community.
Good morning, Commissioners. As our community continues to grow with new residents and visitors, we are committed to addressing important safety issues. According to recent surveys and feedback from the citizens, aggressive panhandling has become an issue of concern in the county. Solicitation after dark and by persons under the influence of alcohol or controlled substances is particularly threatening to visitors and residents. In addition, the prohibition of solicitation from persons that are particularly vulnerable, such as persons standing in line at the ATM or sitting at a stoplight in their vehicle with restricted access, will ensure the protection of tourism and enhancement of public safety. Recognizing that solicitation is entitled to First Amendment protection, it also is important to provide alternate channels of communication. In accordance with North Carolina General Statute 153A-126, regulation of begging, a county may by ordinance prohibit or regulate begging or otherwise canvassing the public for contributions for the private benefit of the solicitor or any other person. I am providing you with an ordinance with the following language. No person shall beg or panhandle in the following areas: within 50 feet of a school zone while students are beginning or ending the school day, within 50 feet of any automated teller machine or any other machine at which money is dispensed to the public, within 50 feet of any commercial establishment which is open for business, within 50 feet of the entrance to any resident or residential building. No person shall beg or panhandle in the following manner: while under the influence of alcohol, illegal drug, or prescription medication unless prescribed by a licensed physician, by coming within 3 feet of the person being approached unless that person has clearly indicated a desire to make a donation, by blocking the path of any person along a sidewalk or street. No person shall stand or loiter in the main traveled portion, including the shoulders and median of any state highway or street, excluding sidewalks, or stop any motor vehicle for the purpose of soliciting employment, business, or contributions from the driver or occupant of any motor vehicle that impedes the normal movement of traffic on the public highways or streets. By using profane or abusive language during the request for a donation or after a donation has been refused. By approaching an individual or individuals for the purpose of begging or panhandling in a group of 3 or more. Penalty: enforcement of the new law will take effect on April 1st, 2018. Violation of this ordinance is a misdemeanor and punishable up to a $500 fine. Commissioners, I will be glad to answer any questions you have at this time.
Thank you, County Manager. At this time, we will open the public hearing for this case. Citizens should address the board in its entirety and not an individual.
I am a small business owner and have had to call the sheriff over 10 times in the last 2 weeks because this man has decided it would be beneficial to beg for money outside my store. Just last week, he approached an elderly couple and told them if they didn't give him money, he might die from not eating. They gave him over $40, which they really couldn't afford on their fixed income. I would hope this ordinance passes so we can eliminate these people from soliciting anywhere they please.
My issue is with the beggars that catch you at the stoplight. When the light turns green, there's always one of those bleeding hearts rolling down their windows after feeling guilty and I miss the light. Come on, if you want to throw your money away, I could use a few bucks.
Okay, let's talk about facts. When more than 60% of panhandlers make less than $25 a day, and when more than 60% of them are disabled in some way, that is not a life that anyone would wish on their greatest enemy. Does a dollar here and a dollar there help? Maybe, or maybe not. No one can really know. The point is that whenever someone can do to help with their own power, they should do. That's part of the human experience. Lending a helping hand up when they can and knowing that there will be a helping hand available when it is needed.
If there isn't enough housing, jobs, medical assistance, food, etc., shouldn't a homeless person have the right to ask for help through panhandling? It may not be the best solution, but in some cases it's necessary. Take, for instance, my friend who receives $900 in disability, which isn't enough for rent, much less food. She has to panhandle for food and a part of her rent. I just don't understand why the county wants to make this a big issue. This is a freedom of speech issue if they want to hold up a sign and ask for money.
Excuse me, before the next citizen, can everybody please put their sign down? We cannot have any interference with this, and please let the people try and speak, all right? Thank you.
I'm confused.
We will have you removed by the bailiff if you do not put the sign down. Bailiff, can you please remove them from the court? Bailiff, can you please remove them?
I'm confused. I thought this ordinance was about giving direction to people that were panhandling, not denying them their rights. There may have been plenty of times that I have wanted to give money to people, but I don't want them bullying me or standing next to me while I'm at the ATM. Commissioners, I urge you to pass this ordinance as presented.
This is firstly a public safety issue. Secondly, a direct infringement upon commerce. Many of these people collect upwards of $40 per hour, and the ones making $30 a day stop, only because they have enough money for their smokes and booze.
For all applause.
I'd like to say that this is just another way for the government to control another thing. This board doesn't care one bit about us small folks who have to actually work to make a living. Unless you're someone special or high up, they don't care one bit. I barely can afford the ridiculous taxes this country makes me pay, and I can tell you I don't see how one dime of my money is spent here. We pay for them sheriffs. Are they going to be out on patrol extra hours to take care of these so-called panhandlers? What's next? Forcing them folks to show proof of medical records and disability and unemployment? You all don't care about them folks. You just want to hide how you've actually failed your citizens and sweep them under the rug.
Please stop. All right. Anybody that continues to make noise out of order will be removed.
Come on, everyone. I hardly think those people that are out there asking for assistance occasionally really had life ambitions to grow up and be a beggar. They're doing it so they can survive just like the rest of us. Try putting yourself in their position and have a little compassion. And if you as a board say you are the people of this county, you should have enough heart to find other ways to help them rather than enable or restrict their freedoms.
Tell him to get a job.
Bailiff, can you please remove that individual? Are there any other citizens who would like to speak to this matter? If not, I will close the public hearing and bring this matter back to the board for discussion and decision. Manager, could you please clarify if this ordinance would apply? Order, please. Could you please clarify if this would apply to Girl Scouts or firemen donated you see around Walmart typically?
No, I cannot clarify.
Not clarify. Is there anyone that can?
Yes.
No? All right.
I'll confer with legal counsel and come back.
All right, thank you. Any other citizens who would like to speak? Commissioners? All right. Can you please remove the now 3 people Order, please. And the leader of the chant right there wearing the white shirt, can you please be removed too? Order, please. Remove her, bailiff. Bailiff, can you also please remove the man in the white shirt right there? Commissioner?
When enforcing this, how many sheriffs or law enforcement officers will we need to actually pursue this and enforce this law? That's something we'd have to speak with the sheriff about.
All right. One of the commissioners will need to make a motion to adopt or deny the ordinance.
Well, before we vote for this, I think we ought to take into consideration that panhandlers, if they are supposedly only making $30 a day, aren't tax-paying citizens. And then that money that would take for them to sit in jail, they would not be contributing to. So exactly what kind of costs would incur from jailing or fining these citizens and patrolling to get them?
Right, yeah.
Order, please.
You'd have to talk with your sheriff and your finance committee to, I'd have to talk with the sheriff and the finance committee to gather some additional data.
All right, thank you. So commissioners can pass the motion. Do we agree?
You need a motion to approve or deny.
To approve or deny? I need a motion from any of you.
I would say a motion to deny. We don't have enough information on this. Could it even be legal?
All right, anybody want to second his opinion?
Yes, I believe we need more information on this.
All right. May I have additional discussion with the board?
No discussion. Call for the vote. All in favor of the motion?
All in favor of the motion? Say aye. Or however you want to do it.
No, the board has that.
Yeah, board, you guys. Please let the whole room know.
I vote no. I don't feel like we have enough information to pass this.
My other commissioners? You guys are still no?
I would also vote in no.
You need to.
I do agree with it, that we do need more information, so it's also a no from me.
Motion don't carry. Yeah, a majority.
All right, the majority motion does not carry. Motion to adjourn.
As the chairman of the board, and Commissioner Buchanan has been the chairman before on another board, another term, but we have to, when we have a public hearing, we have to listen to all sides of the issue and the story. And sometimes we always come into the meeting with an open mind, and citizens drive the train. The citizens really are our boss. The citizens pay the bill, so we have to see what the citizenry thinks. And a lot of times, people come to our meeting and they speak for or against the issue, just like you did out here. We don't quite have the hecklers, but if we do, there's a state statute that makes that a misdemeanor. And if you disrupt the meeting, you could be charged criminally with it. So that's why we can call the meeting to order. That's why we can find you out of order. That's why we have you removed. And then then we can actually have you charged criminally, because the bailiffs the sheriff department has bailiffs, not bailiffs, but security in our meeting, and they take action whenever we need them to calm the courtroom, the chamber down and get people back under control, because it's a controlled environment. It's like going, just like this is a courtroom setting. If you were to do what you did in a courtroom, guess what would happen? The judge would find you in contempt, and he could say, I'm going to give you 30 days over in jail. And there's nothing that can change that. You can't even post bond, because he's already found you guilty and sentenced you and gave you your time over there in the cooler, so to speak. So we take our business seriously, but we also have a passion for listening to the people and finding out what the people want and looking at both sides of the issue. And it's complicated sometimes, because sometimes we've got half the people come in and are in favor of a subject, and then the other half over there may not be in favor of it. So you got two people. So I always say, some people like things, some people don't like things, and we have to make the decision based on how it impacts the county and the citizens. Any other?
Yeah, the key thing here is, and Mark Price is, we're already talking about this discussion with these individuals. The problem I have with it is, and we've talked, Mark and I have, and some of the commissioners, if you take this individual, first place, they're homeless. Now, there are some people getting rich off of this. There are some people in New York and New Jersey, we've seen some stats on them. They got a brand new Cadillac around the corner, and they go change clothes from old clothes. But we have a lot of homeless people here in Onslow County. So the problem we run into is, all right, I arrest this homeless person. He hasn't got a dime to his name. He's got a dog with him most of the time. I've seen a couple of them. You put him in jail, who's the cost to now? Taxpayers. Taxpayers are going to pay him in jail. Now, let me explain something else about the jail. We have over, and on the sheriff's side, not here right now, and maybe the manager can tell me, there's almost 330-some people in our facility. And we have the medical problems with these individuals. So you got the medical part of it, we're feeding them and everything else. It's a cost to the taxpayers. So it's really concerning. And we're talking amongst ourselves about this issue, but there is one issue that can be handled, and that's impeding the normal flow of traffic. That's a misdemeanor. The highway patrol, deputy sheriffs, police officers can arrest for that. We're not seeing that, I don't think, right now. What we're seeing is removing them from the area, trying to work with these individuals. A lot of them have some mental problems. So it's a hard situation for us, and Mark and I and some of us have talked about it.
Yeah, I was going to say that we usually have our agenda at least a week before the meeting, and we all do a lot of research on the items that are coming up on our agenda. So when we know that something like this is coming, we're going to do research. We're going to be talking to people. We're going to be on the internet, talking to other commissioners throughout the state probably to see what they're doing. And when we come to our meetings, we all try to come as well informed on the issue as we possibly can be. So, you know, we talk about this issue a little bit, but if this ever comes to our board, then we'll be fully versed on what the pros and cons are, and then we'll have to make a decision based on what we feel like is best for our citizens.
As Commissioner Bennett talked about, a couple of keys here is information. Like you guys found out in the mock meeting that you needed information from the sheriff about how this is going to impact his department. How is it going to impact his jail? Is he going to have enough room to house these folks? How much is it going to cost the county? That type of thing. So information. We have to have information from staff and from other departments to help us know in order to make good decisions. And also unintended consequences. Is it going to impact that fireman that's out with his boot, collecting money for the volunteer fire department? Those kind of things. Is it going to impact those nonprofit people who are out trying to collect for a good cause, that are actually legit? And so these are things that you have to ask those questions, that you might have some unintended consequences, things that you didn't mean for to happen if you don't ask those questions in advance. So you got to kind of think about what potentially could go wrong with an ordinance like this and bring that out as well in discussion.
Mr. Cotton, if I could ask you to come in, and can you tell the group what it is as county manager, what your role is and how you work with our commissioners?
Sure. As a county manager, and I'll give you specifics for Onslow County, we have approximately 1,300 employees, $215 million budget that we oversee annually. And for the commissioners, I'm one of 3 full-time administrative staff that the board actually appoints. So I serve at the pleasure of the board. So if they come in, and this is not an exaggeration, a majority of them do not like the color of my tie, they can fire me, and all I can do is say thank you and leave. The rest of the staff are at will, and it's a little bit more of an involved process. It actually has to be for cause. This scenario here, a successful manager, I won't say good, a successful manager will know and anticipate the questions of his bosses. And I've got a really good group of commissioners in that they'll call me before a meeting to ask specific questions so that I can speak with my staff, do the research, and then when they ask the question in the public, we have those answers for them. Some of the questions that they asked, I would have anticipated and had answers for them. So being a manager, it's really supporting the commissioners with the data points, giving them the pros and the cons, and really being apolitical. I have served what I currently serve right now, which is an all-Republican board. I've served all Democrat board. I've served a mix. And to be a successful manager, you really have to be apolitical. The 2 standards that I use are the decisions legal and are they ethical? If they meet both of those criteria, it's mine to implement. They will never know whether I agree with the decision that they've made or disagree. That's not my decision. I'm sorry, that's not my job. My job is to implement. They are the policymakers, and I work with my staff to implement that policy and their guidance and vision for the community, or for the county.
One of the things I like to say is, the staff that we have is some of the best staff we've ever had. And I've been a commissioner now going on 14 years, and that's just one of our managers. He can introduce, there's about 3 of them over there that are assistant county managers, but that really put this all together is Julie Wan. You've met her a while ago. She's clerk to the board. She herds us around like cats. It's a terminology that we use with her a lot of times, but she makes sure we're where we're supposed to be and lets us know what's going on. Constantly we have our iPads. We all carry iPads, and she's constantly giving us information. But she is the backbone to these commissioners. I mean, that's our clerk, and that's Julie Wan over there. The county, and we have an assistant clerk that's over there too, with Megan. Our staff, and I brag about this all the time, and Jack hears me a lot, we have some of the best staff that we've ever had in this county.
I'd just mirror what he said, and I'd like for Deputy County Manager Sharon Russell to just stand up. Our Assistant County Manager, Ms. Sherry Slater. Our Assistant County Manager, Mr. Ben Warren. And of course, Julie Wan as our clerk, and Morgan Cunningham as our assistant to the clerk. Those folks and then up front here is our public relations person, Mr. C.J. Cornelius Ford. He does a tremendous job, and he meant, David mentioned that we are all Republican board, but I'm going to tell you, it don't matter if you register to vote, you're Republican or Democrat or independent, it don't matter. We try to serve everybody equally, and we try to address all the problems that everybody has. And when you come before us, we only see citizens, and that's what we look at. We don't look at nothing else. We look at citizens, and we try to make our decisions based on the best for the county and the best for the citizens. I don't know if Rick's still here or not, but I'm surprised they didn't ask us for some more money this morning. Real quick, I'll just tell you that, and I know we've got to get out of here, but this board here, we are responsible for a quarter billion dollar budget. That's what we have to manage every year. And as David said, we've got over 1,300 employees. David has got 6 with Julie, boss men. So you can imagine how intense his job is, because Commissioner Buchanan will call him and say, David, I need you to check on this. Commissioner Price will call him and say, David, I need you to check on this. Royce will call him and say, David, I need you to check on this. He's kind of busy, because all of us have different people that call us, and I get right around 10, 15 calls a day from citizens, and I really enjoy helping the citizens that need to find out about a building permit, or they need to find out about a dog complaint call. It's always, something that we can help little problems. And I get just as much out of that as I do voting on a $250 million budget. And $250 million is a lot of money, and that figure keeps growing. Right now it's 50. It's going to be around 50 or a little bit more than $50 million that we give to you guys or to the school board for our part, for helping y'all get the things that y'all want to get. And out of a $250,000 budget, $50 million, that's a good chunk of our budget. So that's just the dynamics of what we look at over here. I thank y'all for coming and being part of this. And if you ever have any questions, we all available. Give us a call.
Gentlemen, you want to take a couple of
Yeah.
questions?
Yeah.
Anybody have any questions that you'd like to ask of our county commissioner? We've got time for 1 or 2 before our next session. If anybody would like to ask our commissioners a question. This group is slow starting with questions of our superintendent as well.
They're probably ready to get lunch.
We try to operate our meetings by Robert's Rules of Order. How many of you know about Robert's Rules of Order? Yeah. And one of the things that I noticed in our meeting is nobody wanted to make a motion on the item that was before you. But the proper way to do it is to make a motion in a second and then have the discussion instead of everybody discussing before. And the purpose for that is the belief is if there aren't 2 commissioners or 2 people on the board who are interested enough in the agenda item to want to discuss it and provide a first and a second, then there's no reason for the rest of us to talk about it. So it seems kind of out of whack when you're doing something like this, that everybody wants to talk about it before you make the motion. But the fact is, if there aren't 2 people in the group that want to talk about the issue, then there's no reason to waste your time on it. So.
Okay, gentlemen, let me ask you if I might. We've talked a lot about having to make decisions based on limited funds. How, as county commissioners, do you address that? I know there's not unlimited funds in our county. What does that force you as a group to consider as you're making decisions for Onslow County?
Well, you guys may want to weigh in, but every year now, Mr. Cotton has brought us together in a workshop, and we all have priorities. We give him a list of priorities. School funding, public safety, the Lawrenceville, the fire departments, the EMS, the rescue squads. We create a list of items that we want to address for each year's budget. And then after we do that, we as commissioners pick out the list of priorities on that list. And this year, we were looking at our crisis center, our drug interdiction. That was one of the top things on our list this year. We're actually putting in a crisis center for detoxification. We actually paying out of the money out of our budget is $500,000 for that center. The next thing was maintain and keep the funding formula for the schools. We created a funding formula for the schools, and that's based on so many dollars per student. So any added students that come into play, like Superintendent Stout was saying, we have around 300-400 more students a year, so we have to add money to that because that's so many, I think it's $1,875 per student that we give the Onslow County school system to do that program. And that funding formula has been a model throughout the state where the state, some of the other school systems in the state has called and said, hey, I like that idea, I like that model. We want to copy that. We want to see what y'all do with it. We think that's a good plan. So it's becoming an icon in the school system now to develop that funding formula. The next big item was public safety. If you notice out behind the building here, we're building a new courtroom. With the new courtroom, we're going to add these courtrooms to those courtrooms, and it's going to give us 4 more additional courtrooms. And a lot of us say, well, we really like that space. But once we get that courtroom up and running, we got to have 2 additional bailiffs per courtroom. So that's a minimum of about 8 more additional bailiffs that's going to have to go in the courtroom. Any of you got any idea how much a bailiff or deputy sheriff costs the county per year with all the benefits? How much?
Take a guess. $100,000. About $100,000.
$100,000 a piece.
The salary, the cars, all the equipment, all the training.
So eight deputies is $1 million. Any way you look at it. So we have to budget for that. We have to come up with the money, and then that's when we go back to the people and say, people, is this all right with you? Can you afford it? Do you want to raise taxes to do it? Nobody wants to pay more money, do you? Anybody like to pay taxes? How many of you like to pay taxes?
How many are actually paying taxes? Okay.
I'd like to get your attention for just a second, but we have 2 board members over here from the Board of Education. I wish they'd come join us a second. Come here. Let me tell you why I'm doing this. In Onslow County, the working relationship we have with the Board of Education and the county commissioners is one of the best in the state. We already heard Jack Fry talk about people coming in and checking on us and seeing what we're doing, how it works. But they can tell you, if they don't like what we are doing, they can take us to court and sue us. That has never been on the table as long as I've been a commissioner on 14 years. The working relationship we have with them is out of this world. We share that with you guys.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And the court situation that Mr. Buchanan is talking about, that's a no-win situation for anybody. We never even think about that because we have such a good working relationship.
One other thing that I'd mention is that we have state mandates that we have to deal with as well. The state legislature tells us that we have to spend a certain amount of money on certain things. It's called hard mandates and a soft mandate. A hard mandate, they tell us you have to spend this amount of money. A soft mandate says you have to spend money, but it's up to you to determine how much. And the state mandates, both hard mandates and soft mandates, is 80%. Is that correct? So the state legislature tells us we have to spend 80% on those mandates. So we don't have a great deal of flexibility except with 20%. Some flexibility with the soft mandates because we can determine how much we want to spend on those areas, but it kind of handcuffs us a little bit in those areas.
He's right. 80% of the money that we generate, 80% has to go for what they call unfunded mandates. We're mandated by law to fund certain programs. Schools are one, and that's a big part of the budget. Public safety is another. And Department of Social Services, social programs, we're mandated. Some of that money pass through, but we still have to manage it. We only have about 20% of the money we collect through sales tax, property tax, and user fees that we can actually have discretion in how we spend it and how we use it. So that's a small portion of the money that we actually have control over. So, and like Mark said, and Commissioner Buchanan, the school board has the option, if they come to us and say that they need additional $25 million, and we say, no, we're not going to do it, we don't have that kind of relationship, really. But if they said that they got to have it and we don't fund it, they can take us to court, legally take us to court and sue us for the money that they need to get the funding they need. So we have a tremendous relationship. I think we've met, this board here has met with the school board more times in the last year than some of the previous boards have met altogether. So we really have a cohesive relationship with our school board. They know from the funding formula that they voted on and approved, and we voted on and approved, that that's a working formula, and it's a model for the state. So we take pride into being able to work with our school board with that funding, and it's really a tremendous asset to have something like that in place, because you just can't go out and willy-nilly say, well, we're going to do this, or we're going to flat fund it like we did last year, and that, it's hard for them to prepare a budget, and then at the very last minute we say, we're not going to fund it. Then they have to go back to the drawing board, and they have to have that budget produced at a certain time. I don't know what your timeline, but I know at a certain time you have to have that budget produced. We're mandated also to have a balanced budget by July 1 of every year. We're mandated to have it. But we can't spend no more money than we're taking in. You know, follow me? If you get $2, that's all you can spend. So it's another balance that we have to live with also. And we have to maintain our fund balance of 8%. Of course, our fund balance is pretty healthy right now. But after we build these schools that these guys are wanting, we're not going to have a healthy fund balance. But we're going to do what we can to accommodate our school, and we're obligated anyway to make sure y'all have a good, decent education where you can go to school. And then if you want to go to the skills center after that, the school board and the college putting together a regional skills centers, not only our county but other counties. If you want to be a plumber, if you want to be an electrician, or if you want to be a person in architecture and computer, ITS, all of that stuff is going to come into play, because some people just don't care about going to college, but they want to trade. And have any of your parents ever called a plumber and come out for 15 minutes?
For lately.
And the plumber, when he worked for 5 minutes, he said, my bill's $500. That's quite a bit. There was an old saying, and Harry Brown told this story at groundbreaking for the Skills Center. There was a plumber that went to a doctor's house on the weekend. The doctor had a ceiling falling in and had a water leak. And the plumber came, and in 5 minutes he had the leak fixed and handed the doctor a bill for $400. The doctor said, man, $400? He said, I don't make that kind of money. And the plumber said, that's the reason I'm not a doctor no more.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you and our board members who are here today for joining us. And
Mr. Ernie Lee is a resident of Jacksonville, graduated from Campbell University School of Law in 1985. He has served as an assistant district attorney, a senior assistant district attorney, and chief assistant district attorney with the 4th Prosecutorial District, which includes Onslow, Sampson, Duplin, and Jones counties. Mr. Lee was elected district attorney in November 2010. He has served as major and judge advocate with the U.S. Army Reserves. Mr. Lee is married and the father of 3 children. Please welcome Mr. Ernie Lee.
It was a real pleasure to be here this morning. My name is Ernie Lee. I am the district attorney. I'll be starting my 3rd term in January, so it's been great serving the citizens of Onslow County. I actually started in this courtroom back in January of 1987. I was a young assistant DA, about 26 years of age, and I was sitting right here at this table doing traffic tickets. That's where I started. And I moved to Superior Court next door, the other building next door, back in the summer of 1987, and I've been doing felony cases ever since. I became the DA back in 2011, and I've been serving as DA for the last 7 years. So it's great to be here this morning. I tell you what, I always look forward to this. As a matter of fact, I was thinking, this is the 29th one, is that correct?
I think we're close to that.
Yes, and I think I was like in one of the first ones, which shows how long I've been doing this. Gosh, since that time, I now have a 17-year-old daughter who's at Jacksonville High School. I've got an 8th grader who's over at New Bridge Middle School, and I've got a 5th grader over at Parkwood Elementary. So I'm very much interested in the school system. How many people have ever been to court before? I mean, actually just visiting, not been charged. Just visiting. Okay. Okay. Well, that's great. Court, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, is not like television. It is not like television in any way, fashion, or form. I mean, I'll watch some of the legal shows, the law shows. I like them like other people. But, those shows, everything gets investigated, solved, prosecuted all in like an hour or two maybe. It's not like that in real life. Court is very slow moving. It is very somewhat tedious sometimes. But it's obviously a necessary part of our system. Our justice system is not perfect by any means, but I think it's the best that man is able to devise right here in the United States. I think we have a very excellent system. It's not perfect, but again, I think it's an excellent system. Let me just tell you, I'm the district attorney of 4 counties. I have Onslow, Sampson, Duplin, and Jones counties. So I have a very big district geographically. We stretch all the way from Cumberland County, where Fort Bragg and Fayetteville are located, all the way to Craven, Carteret County. So a very large district. I can't do this job by myself, though. I have 19 assistant DAs who are assigned to assist me in these 4 counties. Then I have a total staff, including prosecutors, of about 37 people who assist me. And I can tell you it's a very, very busy district. This is my biggest county by far, getting close to 200,000 people. So this is where I have 11 of my assistant DAs. I stay here over half my time because of just the number of cases we have pending. Right now in this district, we have about 6,000 cases pending in the superior courts, either waiting to be indicted or have been indicted. 4,000 of those are in Onslow County alone. So this is my busiest county by far. So we stay real busy. Now, but again, I can't do it by myself. There's no way. It's absolutely impossible to do all those cases alone. I still handle a caseload. I do a lot of murder cases in all 4 of my counties. I've done big cases in all 4 of them as district attorney and as an assistant DA. So I stay very, very busy. What I primarily look at are murder cases. We have a total of 34 first-degree murder cases pending in my district. We've actually got the numbers down some in the last 3 months. I have 21 of those in Onslow County right now. So we have a lot pending, but actually that's actually low compared to what it has been. We've had 7 people charged with first-degree murder since November the 3rd. So we've been very, very busy. Let me just tell you a typical day that I might have. I'll drop off my oldest daughter at Jacksonville High School. She has to be there like at 7 o'clock in the morning. I guess y'all have the same schedule. Wow. That is very early in the morning. But I'll drop her off at the high school. I usually just come on to work at that point. So I'm at the office by 7:15. But it gives me a lot of time to get stuff done. In the mornings for everyone else gets there about 8. So I'll go ahead and answer my emails. I'll check my messages and try to get my day planned out as best I can. But generally, whatever I plan for that day rarely actually goes that way. Because as the district attorney, I'm always having to react to what is going on out there. Criminals do not call me ahead of time and tell me when they're going to do their stuff. They just do it. Unfortunately, much of it, particularly the homicides, are generally after the midnight hour after I'm in bed. And I'll get a call from some sheriff or a police chief somewhere in my district telling me there's been something bad happen, asking for my advice. Unfortunately, many of those are like 2 or 3 in the morning. And I'll be on the phone talking to them about cases. But on my typical day like today, as soon as I got to work, I got here a little after 7:15. I was checking some of my emails, and my phone started ringing. I was having to deal with a sheriff's issue over one of my other counties this morning, first thing. The State Bureau of Investigation was calling me from one of my other counties, first thing. And I'm having to talk to them about some issues over in those other counties. An attorney wanted to meet with me this morning, which I did that about a matter. And that's pretty much what I've been doing this morning. Then I had a deputy I needed to meet with in a murder case. He came in and met with me at 8:30. I met with him for about 45 minutes preparing for a murder case that's coming up soon. So that's been my typical morning. After that, I started working on one of my cases until I came over here. This afternoon, I've already got some other scheduled meetings, one at 1:30. Then I've got another one this afternoon about 3 o'clock. I've got to meet with someone. In between those meetings, I'm trying to work on cases. As a result, I'll end up taking a lot of my cases home with me because really there's not enough time in the day with all the meetings and phone contact I have and all that. So I had to take a lot of stuff over the weekends and at nighttime working on it after my children have gone to bed. But that's my typical day right there. Now, if I'm in court, we usually start court, particularly over in Superior Court, at 9:30. Of course, I'm here much earlier than that, getting witnesses ready and all those things. We'll go to court at 9:30. We'll work until about 12:30. We'll take about an hour and a half lunch, and that's not really for us, not for the prosecutors. It's more for the jurors. That way, because they're outside their home environment, that way they can find some place to eat and get back in plenty of time. We'll go back in session at 2 o'clock. We'll usually go till 5 o'clock, sometimes after 5, depending on who the judge is. And then we'll do that day in and day out until we have to get the case done. So that's going to be a typical day for me. Now, let me tell you, I do murder cases. I do primarily first-degree murder cases at this point. I have, I think, of those 34, I've got 12 actually assigned to me. It does not mean I'll do them all by myself, though. Even the ones that are assigned to me, I'll have an assistant that usually assists me in one of the counties. And we'll be preparing those cases either for some type of disposition, whether a guilty plea or a trial. And that's what I do. That's my job. In terms of work, it's a tough job. You're always on call. I remind my prosecutors, you're always a prosecutor, 24/7. You're never not a prosecutor. Which means that's the reason the phone calls come in after midnight. That's the reason the phone calls come in at 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever. And so we're always on duty because we never know when something big is going to happen. We're going to be contacted by the law enforcement. Many times I'll get contacted, I'll go out to the scenes. For example, on January 1st, this is past January, I got a call, it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. There was a suspected homicide over North Topsail Beach. So I got the call about 3 o'clock from the law enforcement in North Topsail. I spoke to them about it, then I got up with the Onslow County Sheriff's Office case about it, Onslow County Sheriff's Office about it, and at which time then I met down at the Sheriff's Office about 4:30 that morning and assisted with some search warrants, and then assisted giving other direction to law enforcement. I stayed down there to about 8 o'clock that morning and went home, and then later that afternoon I went down to the scene at North Topsail Beach with law enforcement to see the scene. So that was something that happened on January 1st. That was actually a state holiday, but obviously things happen even when we're off. So that's why I've got to be responsible to do that, and I expect my ADAs also to be receptive to law enforcement and to help them. And why do we do that? Because I have two duties under the Constitution of North Carolina. One of my duties is to advise law enforcement. We have a constitutional duty to advise them. That means when law enforcement calls up with a question, whether it be about search warrants or about charging or whatever the case may be, my job is to advise them. My second constitutional duty, though, is also to prosecute cases on behalf of the state of North Carolina. And that's what I do most of the time. It's primarily my primary responsibility. And what does that mean on behalf of the state of North Carolina? That means I do not represent you as individuals. As a matter of fact, when I go to court, I will say, the state of North Carolina. I am the state of North Carolina for that particular case. So I don't represent you as individuals. It's as the state of North Carolina. And I represent victims to some extent because you're part of the state of North Carolina. So when someone is victimized, no matter what the case may be, my office will handle the case. And that case can be all the way from minor misdemeanors, low-level misdemeanors, all the way up to capital murder. And we'll represent the state of North Carolina in those type cases. I have 3 ADAs assigned over here in Onslow District Court because we have a very active and busy district court. And I have 8 prosecutors assigned to Onslow Superior Court because we have a very busy Superior Court here as well. We stay quite busy here. This is by far my busiest county. We have the largest population. We have a very young population, the very age group that many times that are involved in criminal activity live right here in Onslow County. And of course we have the United States Marine Corps bases here, and I had to deal a lot with those as well. Okay, I told you I deal with murder cases, okay? Anyone know what first-degree murder is? Yes, sir?
That's premeditated murder.
Okay, premeditated murder. Excellent. That is excellent. Let me tell you, here's the definition of murder, first-degree murder in the state of North Carolina. It's the unlawful killing of another human being with malice and with premeditation and deliberation. Now, that's one form of first-degree murder. And that's what I'm primarily going to be dealing with, those premeditated type murders. So it's got to be the unlawful killing of another human being. So if you kill an animal, it cannot be murder. Okay, some people will contact me, they want someone charged with murder if an animal's been killed, but it's not murder in the state of North Carolina, it would be animal cruelty. It's got to be a human being. Okay? And it's got to be with malice. Anyone know what malice is? What do you think malice is? Okay. Yes, sir. Hate? Excellent. What else? Yes. Evil intentions. That's excellent. Anyone else? Okay? It means all those things. Ill will, spite, hatred, all those type things. But malice can also mean something else. And Miss Robley's heard this so many times, haven't you? She could probably state it right now. But malice also means reckless disregard for the rights and safety of others. Now, what does that mean? Okay? Let's say, for example, I've used this example many, many times. If you were on top of the new courthouse over there, the building, and I saw some guys the other day on the top of that roof working on it. Let's say they're up there laying some bricks on that new courthouse. Okay? Get a little bored after doing that all day. They decide it might be kind of cool, which it's not. It might be kind of cool to start throwing bricks off the top of the building and see them hit the sidewalk. Because you know, when the bricks hit the sidewalk, they sort of explode, sort of like fireworks on the sidewalk. And they think that would be kind of cool. The problem is, though, while they're working up there, they know there are students here from Onslow County with the close-up program walking around the building, walking on the sidewalks. If they start throwing bricks off the top of the building, is that reckless disregard for the rights and safety of others? Yes. Absolutely. That would be malice in the state of North Carolina. It doesn't always require hatred or ill will. They don't even know you. They don't know your names. They may know you as a group being here today, but they don't know you individually, so how can they hate you? But they're so reckless in their actions. You'll also see this come up many times, like in driving while impaired type cases, where someone is driving impaired and then they kill someone. They did not go out with the intent to actually kill that person. They didn't know the other person in the other car. There's no way they could have hated them. Yet are they still reckless in their actions? Yes, particularly if they have a prior driving while impaired. Particularly if they have a prior driving while license revoked. That would be malice in the state of North Carolina. So that's one of the things. That's what malice is. It means many different things. Malice can also be implied or presumed from the use of a deadly weapon. If you take a gun and you've not checked to see if it is loaded, and you suddenly point it at someone, is that an inherently dangerous act? Yes. Absolutely it is. And that could be malice in the state of North Carolina. Even though I didn't intend to kill you, if I pull the trigger, that is pretty reckless, first of all, but it's also inherently dangerous because it is a dangerous weapon. Okay? So it also has to be with premeditation and deliberation. That's one way of first-degree murder. Now, what is premeditation and deliberation? What does that mean? How long do you have to plan it? Give me some answers. Raise your hand, though, I guess. Someone raise their hand. Yes. How long? How long?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Wow. Okay. How about you just thought about it? Just as long as you thought about it. Okay. Someone else. Yes. Hours. Minutes maybe. Seconds maybe. All right. I think she wins the prize. You know, premeditation in North Carolina can be however short of time it is that you can form the specific intent to kill. That can be a very short time. It could be seconds. It could be an amount of time where that individual actually takes a gun out and then points that gun and pulls the trigger. That may only take a few seconds, but that's enough for premeditation and deliberation. It may be about that time where someone grabs a knife and decides to stab someone. It may just be a few seconds, and many times it is only a few seconds. That would still be enough for premeditation. Now, obviously, the jury's got to find that. The jury's going to have to decide whether or not that is premeditation and deliberation. Okay? There's another way for first-degree murder in the state of North Carolina. That would also what's called the felony murder rule. Say, for example, Someone goes into a convenience store with the intent to rob the clerk. They go in that store with a gun. They did not intend to hurt anyone, but they want money. While in the store, though, they do shoot the clerk. They didn't intend to when they went in, but while they're in the store, they shot the clerk during the robbery. That would be first-degree murder in the state of North Carolina. Why? Because a homicide occurred during the commission of a violent or dangerous felony. Even though they didn't intend to kill that clerk when they got up that morning, even though they did not intend to kill that clerk when they walked in that store, that would be what is called the felony murder rule. And in fact, you could have various theories for first-degree murder. Another is lying in wait. Don't see that quite so often. But if in fact someone were waiting to ambush someone, that would be a first-degree murder because it's lying in wait for someone. And there's some other ways under our statute, 14-17, that explains first-degree murder. Now, we also have our punishments for first-degree murder in the state of North Carolina are limited to 2 punishments, only 2. Either the death penalty or life without parole. And life without parole means that, life without parole. It used not to be that. It used to be life sentence, which meant that you could be eligible for parole in about 20 years or so. But now it's actually life without parole, which means what it says, that they will serve the rest of their lives in prison. And I've got a lot of just serving life without parole right now in the Department of Correction, Department of Adult Correction, quite a few. But another punishment is the death penalty. Now, the only time that you get the death penalty in the state of North Carolina is for first-degree murder. That is it. That's the only crime. However, not every first-degree murder is a death penalty case. Okay? Which means this. In order to make a first-degree capital case or a death penalty case, you must have not only first-degree murder, but you must have also an aggravating circumstance to make it first. I believe it was recently in the paper there were a couple of cases that were declared non-capital. At least one of those, there was no aggravating circumstance, so it was never capital to begin with. It could not be capital. It had to be a non-capital case. There was no aggravating circumstance. So it wasn't like the state gave up the death penalty. There was no death penalty for us to even seek. There's no aggravating circumstance. Now, what is an aggravating circumstance? Well, there's only 11 of them listed under statutes. And we cannot go outside those 11. For example, if a murder is especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel, that would be potentially capital as an aggravating circumstance. Now, what do you think that means? Especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel? I mean, aren't all murders, in essence, heinous, atrocious, or cruel because it's murder? Yes.
Would it be if, like, you chopped up the body?
She said like you chopped up the body?
And then put it in a freezer?
Put it in the freezer? Yeah. That would probably be so. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Yeah, that could be. That could be. Yes. I can't hear you, sir. I'm sorry.
Going the extra mile and making sure you can do as close as possible.
Okay.
You can get the kill a little bit sooner, but you'd rather take your time with it.
Yeah, like a torture type situation. Yeah, all those are good examples of what could be especially heinous, or atrocious, or cruel. Not every murder is going to be that, no whether it's first degree or not. But those are good examples of what could possibly be especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel. But the word is especially so. Yes?
If you were to torture somebody and keep them under their will, wouldn't that also be classified as kidnapping?
Yes, if you kept them against their will. And that's a whole other felony right there. We have first-degree kidnapping and second-degree kidnapping in the state of North Carolina. It's actually a whole other charge. And then if they died as a result of that kidnapping, it could be a felony murder rule because that's a violent felony, a dangerous felony. What I have to do in these cases, when I look at these, evaluate each of these cases and determine whether or not, first of all, it's a first-degree murder. Secondly, whether or not it's a capital or non-capital case. And I have to do that on each one of these murders that comes in. Now, I don't do this in a vacuum. I mean, I read the law every time. I've been doing this for a very long time, but I still always look to log in. Then secondly, I'll also consult some of my prosecutors. My chief ADA is Michael Malsby. He's been with me over 25 years. We served together as assistant DAs. Now he works for me as DA. And we'll talk about these cases, and we'll decide whether or not we have an aggravating circumstance. But then on top of that, can we prove it beyond a reasonable doubt? That's the key right there. Because just because you have one, we still must decide whether or not we can prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. And that means convince 12 jurors that an aggravating circumstance exists. And that's a tall order. You think about it, taking 12 of you right now randomly. I throw a scenario out to you, and all 12 of you must agree. That's a high burden. And that's the way it should be. This burden's on the state of North Carolina. It's a high burden. Let's say, for example, though, let's say I try a capital case, and I have an aggravating circumstance, or at least I offer it to the jury. I believe that there's sufficient evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. Let's say that the jurors get back there. 11 of them say, I agree with the state of North Carolina. The state has proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt. Therefore, the 11 of us, we vote death. One says, I don't think so. I have my doubts. I don't think they've proven this aggravating circumstance beyond a reasonable doubt. Then what happens on the verdict? If they can't decide, if it's 11-1, even though 11 are in the state's favor, life without parole. Because the benefit goes toward the defendant. It must be unanimous. If it's not unanimous, it will be life without parole. I mean, I had a jury one time, it was a first-degree murder, child abuse type case. The jurors got back there, it was 11 people who voted guilty. One person, I found this out in the newspaper, one person wouldn't vote. So they didn't vote guilty or not guilty, they just wouldn't vote. So therefore, it was not unanimous. And as a result of that, there's no verdict, which means I had to try the case again. It was a non-capital case, and 3 weeks later, I called it up again and tried it. So that's the way it's good. It's got to be unanimous in the state of North Carolina. Okay, other than murder cases, which I do a lot of, we also do a lot of other cases up here. I mean, we deal, right now, the big issues we have are dealing with drugs, and that's been since the 1980s when I started. The only thing that's different is the type of drugs that we're prosecuting. That is it. When I started with the DA's office in 1987, our big drugs were marijuana and cocaine. Okay? Mostly crack cocaine. And I prosecuted a bunch of those cases. Now we're prosecuting more opioid type offenses, heroin type offenses. Before that, it was meth. We were prosecuting a lot of meth cases, but now it's sort of shifted to the opioids and heroin. So that's been a real emphasis with our office and with law enforcement. We spend an inordinate amount of time prosecuting those type cases. Most of the cases we have pending right now involve drugs in some way. Either that the people are charged with drug offenses, or they've committed other offenses based upon the fact either they're addicted, they're sellers, or whatever. They'll break in places, they'll steal items, or whatever the case may be. Now, ultimately, my job, though, is to seek justice. That is the job of the prosecutor. As a matter of fact, in the state bar, it says, we are ministers of justice. My job is not simply to get a conviction. My job is not simply to put someone on death row, or life without parole, or probation, or whatever the case may be. My job is to see that justice is done. And justice comes in many forms. Now, what do you think justice is? Any ideas? Can you give me a definition of what justice is? Someone raise your hand. Yes? Freedom? Okay. Kind of a hard term to define, isn't it? Justice. You know, and it is hard to define. But it's sort of one of those things you sort of know it when you see it. But it also can be very subjective. Let me give you an example. I've given this example many times. When I was a young prosecutor, I had an individual whose car was broken into. Okay? It's a low-level felony. And we caught the person. The person was 17 years of age. But an adult in the state of North Carolina, because right now the law is still 16. Okay? And that person was treated as an adult. I remember, though, the victims in that case came to see me, and I haven't been doing Superior Court for very long, But they basically wanted the maximum sentence I could get for this person who broke in their car. They wanted the maximum sentence, the most active time you could get, community service, fines, restitution, the maximum. And I told them, I said, more than likely what's going to happen is first offense is going to be probation. I said, that's probably what's going to happen. It's a property crime. First offense, 17-year-old is probably going to be probation. Well, we go to court, and guess what happens? Probation. Those people were angry at me. They thought they could not get justice from the DA's office. Okay? So they left my office pretty hot. A year later, their son gets charged with possession of marijuana and possession of drug paraphernalia. Well, I'm the only person they knew in the system, even though they weren't happy with me. They came to see me. And then they're asking about what's going to happen to their son. Now, do you think they wanted justice for their son? What do they want? They want to get him off. They wanted mercy. They wanted mercy for their son. So I guess the moral of that is justice is different depending where you're at in the system. It's always easier to be tougher on someone that you don't know out there. Like that person ought to get the death penalty. That person ought to get life without parole. But when it starts getting a little bit closer to home sometimes, particularly if it's a family member, that's not exactly what someone wants. So justice can change depending where you are in the system. And I've noticed that a lot through the years. But ultimately, my job, though, my job as a prosecutor is, I am not to be swayed by what the public wants. I am not to be swayed by even what the victims want. My job is to base my decisions upon the facts and the law, be objective, and make the best decision I can based upon my experience. And I'll talk to my other prosecutors, too, about this. And we've got to do what's right. It is not simply because the public is demanding something, because that's not the way our system is. I mean, I've been elected to do this job, and it's not always going to be popular decisions I make. But I can tell you what, I do think about my decisions a lot. I do think about them a whole lot. And I try to do what's just right. I just got to decide what is the right thing to do in this case. The problem is, though, many times I cannot then publicly state all my reasons. I cannot because I'm aware of facts and evidence that is not public record, that's been told to me, and I cannot sometimes relay that to the public. But I can tell you, we spend a lot of time deciding what is the best thing to do in this particular case. We treat it very, very seriously. We play devil's advocate a lot each other in the DA's office, too. And I'll bring my senior prosecutors in, and I always tell them, look, if you think I'm making a wrong decision, tell me now. Don't let me do it, then tell me after the fact. Tell me now. And I'll consider it. I'll reconsider my position. But they will argue with each other. And I tell them to speak up. Just because I'm the boss, I want you to disagree with me if that's truly what you believe. Because I will think about what you're saying, but ultimately I've got to make the decision. And I will do so. Okay, I'm going to take some questions real quick, because I know y'all got to go to lunch soon. Yes?
So, as you said earlier, the justice system isn't perfect. In what ways would you try to change or improve this?
That's a good question. Wow. That is a tough one. I think that I wish sometimes that maybe even the jurors could know more of the evidence. That I know things that's not admissible. I know things, but it's not under our rules. We just can't get it in. And there are sometimes I wish sometimes the jurors that maybe the rules were amended some so they could know some things that under the rules are not admissible, but sometimes I think they should be. Because I think sometimes the jurors are not hearing the entire picture like I've got it. And that would be one thing right there. There's been some argument, maybe we should have less than 12 jurors, maybe get to like a 6-juror system. Now, that's a possibility. I'm fine with the 12, but I also understand that it might be easier sometimes to convince 6 over 12, particularly with maybe lower level felonies. That might be one way to change the system too. That's an excellent question. We'll think about that one more since you've asked me. Okay? Yes?
Do you say that you decide, like, in your mind what you want the outcome to be of a case? Have you ever regretted the outcome of a case after it was decided? Like what you decided?
Oh, yes. I mean, there's been a few cases that, I made the best decision with what the facts I had before me, but then there have been some times, that, not very often, but occasionally I will go back and think, maybe I wish I'd done this a little bit differently. but I just try to learn from those experiences. I mean, you know, we just got to make the best calls like we all do in life. Every day we got to make decisions about so many different things in our lives. And what you do is you just learn from that experience. But I have had some, I kind of wonder, what if I'd done it this way instead of the other way? Of course, you'll never know. But I do think about that when a similar case comes up. Very good question. Thank you. I can't see, there's a black sleeve come up. There it is, right there.
How often do you get cases that get kind of close to home, and how do you handle those cases personally?
That gets tough because particularly those cases involve young children. I mean, I've got 3 children. My children are now older, now 17 and 14 and 11. But I mean, I remember when they were little. And those cases do hit home. Because, you know, I see some very tragic things with cases, particularly young children, and they'll break your heart. And it's very difficult. I've had to look at a lot of autopsy pictures involving infants and young children. And those are very difficult. But I can tell you, though, what I try to do is I try to compartmentalize these things. I mean, it's obviously in my mind because I've seen the pictures, I've talked to the families, and they're about to break your heart. But what I'll do is, once I leave the office, though, I've got my own family. I've got to sort of set this stuff aside, which I do. And because I've got children I've got to take care of. My wife and I have to take care of. So I just try to compartmentalize these things. But obviously I do think about them. I do think about them a lot. And I mean, I dealt with a lady just recently whose daughter was murdered. And she's out of state, which makes it even more difficult because she's not here. I've met with her in person here, but the other day I was on the phone with her again. And I was talking to her about it, and she just broke down crying. And, you know, it's just heartbreaking because all of us could be in that position one day. None of these people ever chose to be victims. None of these people ever chose to be the families of victims, but that's where they are right now. And it's very sad. And I wish sometimes I did have my power just to snap my fingers and make everything all right. And I would, if I could, but I can't. And so that's just all I can do is just try to direct them the best I can, guide them the best I can, give them advice about the case, educate them about the case, and then do the best I can in court. And I encourage all my prosecutors to do their very, very best, to treat it like it's your family that's the victim. Yes, ma'am?
Kind of hit on my question. What advice do you have for prospective future lawyers and attorneys?
Okay. Well, first of all, if you want to be a lawyer, how many people are interested in law? Maybe being a lawyer one day. Okay, we got a lot. Well, I can tell you, even though there's a lot of lawyers in this state, even though there's a lot of lawyers in this country, there's always room for one more good lawyer. And maybe a dozen more good lawyers. There's always room. What I would say, though, is first of all, you've got to keep your grades up in high school. You've got to do well in college. Have fun in college, but study too. And good grades, okay? You've got to keep your grades up. And then when you go to law school, it's not easy. Law school is actually very competitive to even get into. It's becoming even more competitive. You've got to work hard in law school. I mean, do not go into law school with the idea, I'm going to kind of skate through. You're not skating through. Law school is very, very difficult. I'm glad I did it, but I wouldn't want to do it again. But I'm glad I got through it. But you need to really work hard. And then you've got to decide what you want to do. Because once you become a lawyer, there's many things you can do with a law degree. Some people will go into law enforcement. The FBI is always looking for those with law degrees. So some people take that way. Some people become prosecutors like me, work for the state or for the federal government as the United States Attorney. Some people become defense attorneys in criminal law, which is also a great profession, because these people deserve competent, good representation. Some people go work for government agencies, either in Raleigh or in Washington, D.C. Some people join the military. I mean, I served as a judge advocate in the Army Reserve. I very immensely enjoyed it. It was different than what I do in my civilian job. I had to represent soldiers, but I immensely enjoyed it. It was an excellent experience. So you got to decide what type of law you want to go into, civil or criminal. And then, if it doesn't work out, though, keep your mind open. Because a lot of people will go out into private practice and decide, I might want to be a prosecutor. Some people become prosecutors for 2 or 3 years, then go into private practice. So always keep your options open. Just do whatever's going to make you happy. I could have made a lot more money as a defense attorney, representing the very people I prosecute. But it's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a prosecutor. So I'll trade off the money and rather be more satisfied in my job. Yes.
I know you have to follow the law directly, but do any of your personal convictions or experiences ever affect how you pursue a case?
Well, that's excellent. Obviously, these questions are really good. That's a really good question. Yes, in some ways. In some ways. Obviously, because we all go in with, we feel certain ways about things. However, what I will have to do, though, despite how I may personally feel about a particular defendant or a victim's family or whatever the case may be, ultimately I got to set that aside and be objective. And I'll do that. It's not to say when I first see something, I'm just like y'all, I read something in the paper, I get called, you have reactions. But ultimately my job is to be objective. I've got to apply the law equally among defendants. And that's what I do. And I will think about it, I'll talk to my other prosecutors, but ultimately I'm going to be objective. I've got to do that way, because that's what my job is supposed to be. Yes?
Would you say your kind of ethics have been a little bit blunted ever since you've taken this objective approach to things?
What's the first part of the question?
The first part of the question was, do you feel like your ethics and morals have been kind of blunted versus stating an ethics personality?
No, I don't think so. I still feel the same feelings. I have views on different subjects. I don't broadcast my views politically or anything like that. I do have views, but I remain objective. I don't think they have. I just know I got a job to do. I have got a job to do. People are counting me to do this job. And so I just follow the rules. There are rules for us under the law. I look at the facts. I apply those facts to the law, then I make my decisions. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So recently I've been seeing more debate about the death penalty, both for and against. And one argument was that citizens are supposed to be protected from cruel and unusual punishments.
Sure.
So do you see the death penalty as a justifiable thing to do?
Yes, I'm in favor of the death penalty, but I understand the arguments against the death penalty. We've not actually had anyone executed in the state of North Carolina since 2006. So it's been some time. There have been a lot of roadblocks put up there, some legislation we've had to deal with. But nonetheless, it is still the law of the state of North Carolina. It's still the law in over 30 states in this nation. It's just not being implemented very long. In fact, the last person executed from Onslow County was May of 1939. So it's been a long time. That's before World War II. It's been a very long time. I had 3 on death row from Onslow County I personally prosecuted. One of those died of natural causes in prison. 2 are still on death row. They're much younger than me. And so there's a good chance they could outlive me. But it's still the law. And as long as it's on the books, my office intends to still pursue the death penalty in the appropriate case. Yes, ma'am.
What skills as a lawyer do you think you possess that sets yourself aside from other lawyers?
Okay. And, well, I think, first of all, you need to speak in front of groups. That's one thing. So you got to speak in front of a jury. You need to be a little more outgoing. Because you do have to speak in front of a jury of people you've never seen before and actually be able to articulate why you think this certain punishment or this person should be convicted. I think that as a prosecutor, you need to be kind of a steady person. What I mean that is you just got to be objective. You can't let emotion take over. You just got to do what you think is right and stick with that. And if you make a decision, whether it be popular or unpopular, it is what it is. It's the decision. And sometimes you have to defend those decisions, and I have to sometimes too. But if you think you've done, if in your heart you believe you've done right, you'll be okay. And that's what I always tell my prosecutors, is do what you think is right, and everything will work out. Now, if you don't do what's right, it's probably not going to work out.
And I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it here, Mr. Lee, because we've got to head out to our luncheon.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much for